Thank you so much. I'm proud and honored to be here, and I give my congratulations to the graduates and their families. I feel truly, particularly honored and pleased to be talking to you because of the special way that this ardent institution, the University of Southern New Hampshire, offers a bold, distinct model for learning that's relevant to my personal history and to my personal patriotic hopes and fears for our country. I'm going to try to talk to you about those hopes and fears in the context of the process of learning. I'm not going to give you advice. Rather than give you advice, I will ask you for something beyond your own achievements and beyond your celebration of this happy day. I'm going to talk to you about those fears, and I'm going to tell you what I ask of you, and I'm going to be aggressive enough to say that if you can't give it, you don't belong here. In the American expression, if you can't give what I'm asking of you, keep out. First, I'll talk about the fears, and I'll go back to a childhood experience that I had. When I was in grade school and middle school, the school used to show us in assembly these short movies that were provided by industry groups. So we'd go into the auditorium and we'd see a movie called The Miracle of Glass, or The Many Faces of Paper, or Oil, the Black Gold of 1,000 Faces. In these movies, we'd see very complicated diagrams showing the steps that you needed to make fertilizer or fiberglass or whatever it was. And then they showed people in smocks and hard hats carrying clipboards or maybe working those complicated, intricate machines. Sometimes you'd see an assembly line screwing on 1,000 bottle caps a minute, or turning molten steel into perfect fenders, one after another. And when I was a kid in that dark auditorium, watching those machines and the engineers and the diagrams on the screen, I would think to myself, when the grown-ups die, we're not going to be able to do this. I know these kids. No way that they're going to learn how to do these things. It's all going to fall apart. Those processes and diagrams looked hard. How could these jerks, my fellow students, possibly master them? The amazing thing is, I'm kind of old now, and I have seen those things not only survive, but they have improved. The successive generations not only learned what the old ones knew, they have added to it and transformed it. The engineers in the movies, the film crews and directors and people who made the movies, my teachers, pretty much all of them have passed on. But the knowledge endures. Somehow, one way or another, it got passed on. And that's what I'm going to ask of you. That you be aware that part of your responsibility is to pass on what your advisors and teachers have given you. I did not invent poetry. I got it from people older than me who gave it to me. Eleanor Dunphy Freiberg did not invent the intricate, precious web of human rights and laws. She got it from other people. And if you become very successful in your field and are praised and make a lot of money, in my eyes, you are still a failure if you have not somehow thought about how you can help pass it on to other people, either within your work, in your interest in your local public schools, or one way or another. To me, it's your heritage in relation to this university. When I told my friend who teaches at Harvard about this, she said how wonderful to be talking to people in a setting that doesn't necessarily have make your own panini stations and a climbing wall. So I ask you that you look on what you've learned not just as your possession, but as a treasure that you're going to take care of, and indeed, you must change and improve. If you just preserve it in formaldehyde, that is not enough. You must make it better in some way. I'll talk now about how we do this in the United States. In older traditional cultures, the process is performed basically in two ways. One way is by a social class that considers itself by birth the protectors of culture and knowledge, an aristocracy. This lives on in many cultures. In Eastern Europe, a driver is mad at another driver, he'll yell at him, "You have no culture." This is not an American insult. We find other things to yell. In the United States, with our democratic ideal, that we're still trying to build a democratic culture, in that ideal, that is not open to us, and instead, we put pressure and demands and urgency on schools. The other way things are passed on is with a single unifying folk culture. The songs and jokes and stories and recipes and political attitudes and religious findings are passed on by the grandma and grandpa in the kitchen. In the United States, we don't have that single unifying folk culture. The Korean American grandma, the African American grandma, the Belgian American grandma, the Italian American grandma, if they're so lucky and unusual as to live in proximity to the grandchildren, they all have different jokes and stories and histories. In our country, to hold us together, instead of a single unifying folk culture, instead of an aristocracy, we have school and we have invented a wonderful popular culture. American music and movies has been powerful all over the world, not just because of our economic power and our military power. It's been created as part of that need for a democratic culture to make something that the aristocratic class and the unifying folk culture cannot do for us. So our music, with its improvisatory quality, our movies and comedy, with its improvisatory quality, has informed the movies of Buster Keaton and Preston Sturges and the music of Duke Ellington and the poetry of Walt Whitman, which are known to people in South America, in Asia, in Africa, all over the world. So I ask you, please remember that process and contribute to it. Be part of it, or I do say to you in that rude phrase, keep out. You don't belong here. I ask you to consider those generations of American children after you, and because we are not a single unifying folk, to consider them your children without regard to some specific ethnic or exclusive ethnicity or any exclusivity at all. Knowledge is traditionally the property of a ruling class. In our country, the ruling class is supposed to be the people. If the ruling class is to be the people, and we are still working on it, making it up as we go along, then you must consider all of the children, your children. You need to take care of them and help them learn. How does one learn? How should one learn? Many ways, and many of you know better answers to that question than I do. I'm going to give you another personal, autobiographical childhood memory of learning. I'll go back to a central way that I learned about the world and how the world is put together. My mother and father both had large families. They both were the children of immigrants. And when the immigrant aunts and uncles and great-aunts and great-uncles and grandparents gathered together, they talked about family history in a way that was completely confusing. It bewildered me. It wasn't orderly. Separations, second marriages, third marriages, abandoned children, disappearances, veiled adulteries, malfeasances, great loves, great unknowns. It was utterly confusing. It wasn't a family tree. It was a tangled vine that needed more trellis than those aunts and uncles were providing for us. What I learned from those extended, intricate group tellings of history, I think contained a universal truth about the nature of families, the nature of cultures, the nature of human lives, that they are not orderly and conventional, but passionate, desperate improvisations. Maybe some kind of universal truth like that, but maybe not universal. Maybe it is a particularly, peculiarly American story that I learned. An immigrant or migratory story of endurance through good luck and bad luck. An American story in which confusion and disarray is normal, and improvisation and telling are therefore necessary with a particular urgency. Possibly that is an American way of learning, and it requires a spiritual presence and a commitment to passing on the story to the young, no matter how confused the young may be, no matter how tangled or even unseemly the story might be. I'll conclude by reading to you a poem that tells that story. The poem is by William Carlos Williams. William Carlos Williams was a medical doctor, and he was a citizen of the finest and most American of all the states in the Union, New Jersey. Williams was a New Jerseyan and a medical doctor who chose to keep Carlos in his writing name, whose father was English and whose family usually conversed in French. The first time I read this poem by Williams, I immediately liked the way it recalled to me those bewildering conversations of my aunts and uncles and grandparents and great-aunts and great-uncles. I love the poem for its characteristic immigrant story, that immigrant story that is a messy cloud of twists, voyages, separations, betrayals, and redemptions. Impossible to follow in detail, but quite clear in purpose and direction. I treasure for myself and for you the way this story of the past ends with a terse, rough American order to be more than a carcass, to have the spirit of the telling or keep out. A rough American order to appreciate the past, understand its holiness, and to pass it on, however imperfectly. Here, in conclusion, is William Carlos Williams's poem, Dedication for a Plot of Ground. Dedication for a plot of ground. This plot of ground, facing the waters of this inlet, is dedicated to the living presence of Emily Dickinson Wellcome, who was born in England, married, lost her husband, and with her 5-year-old son sailed for New York in a two-master, was driven to the Azores, ran adrift on Fire Island Shoal, met her second husband in a Brooklyn boarding house, went with him to Puerto Rico, bore 3 more children, lost her second husband, lived hard for 8 years in St. Thomas, Puerto Rico, San Domingo, followed the eldest son to New York, lost her daughter, lost her baby, seized the 2 boys of the eldest son by the second marriage, mothered them, they being motherless, fought for them against the other grandmother and the aunts, brought them here summer after summer, defended herself here against thieves, against storms, sun, fire, against flies, against girls that came smelling about, against drought, against weeds, storm tides, neighbors, weasels that stole her chickens, against the weakness of her own hands, against the growing strength of the boys, against wind, against the stones, against trespassers, against rents, against her own mind. She grubbed this earth with her own hands, domineered over this grass plot, blackguarded her oldest son into buying it, lived here 15 years, attained a final loneliness, and if you can bring nothing to this place but your carcass, keep out. Congratulations and thank you.